just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
We're back here on the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast. Joe DeLeone, Ryan Roberts. And today, it's actually, in a way, the start of the NFL draft cycle for the 2023 class. I know that we've spent time talking about various guys declaring, guys getting invites to the Senior Bowl, big performances on a week-to-week basis. But we're officially at that spot where guys are declaring, they're opting out of bowl games. We know who's a part of this class right now, Ryan. So that means we turn our attention to doing some scouting reports, which we're going to do plenty of throughout this draft cycle. Ryan, are you excited?
I am, man. I am. I actually started doing final evaluation scouting reports last week. So yeah, man, it's draft season officially for the people that don't do this year round like we do. So it'll be it's gonna be fun.
So I can feel bad about myself because I've done two final evaluations, or no, three. I've done three final evaluations on interior offensive linemen. How many have you done?
I don't know. I don't know.
Come on, give me a number, Ryan.
I don't have a number in front of me, man. I can pull
give
my
the sickos a number. We want to hear something crazy
on interior offensive linemen or in general.
Just if you had to spitball, just give us a. We know that this is like it's got to be over 30.
No, not finals. I would say maybe like 17. Nah, it's not over 30.
That's still a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's what I do, man.
And if you're a draft sicko like us, you're gonna love this. These shows.
I mean, I've watched a ton of players, and I have notes written up on guys. But as far as like having complete evals, nah, I'm not nowhere near 30. That's a lot, man. You think I'm a machine or something?
Well, you are also a little crazy, like I am. So
I am crazy.
I wouldn't be surprised if you did have a big number. But today we are starting things off with two scouting reports. One on O'Cyrus Torrence from Florida, the other on McClendon Curtis from Chattanooga. Very different levels of football. Before we get into the first one, which is before we get into the first one, which is O'Cyrus Torrence from Florida, I just want to tell you folks about BetOnline, where is the best place to find all the latest odds, news, updates for your sports betting needs. BetOnline.ag has everything from football to basketball. Maybe you want to start getting in some early bets for the NFL draft, who you think is going to be that first overall pick. You can never start betting too early. And if you want to do that, make sure you go to betonline.ag. It's my go-to source for betting. So easy to use, so easy to access, very, very simple interface. If you're going to do it, go to use promo code BELIEVE. That is BLEAV to get a welcome bonus, pretty significant one. Betonline.ag again is where you want to head for that. All right, Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start talking about O'Cyrus Torrence. He was very exciting to watch, and we talked about him coming from Louisiana, transferring over to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Big, massive freaking dude. And I think we were both very optimistic for his development. And for me, he really felt like he took that next step. And this guy is just so freaking strong. The flexibility to me was really starting to show up, and he's starting to play up to that level of capability that he has as an athlete, as an interior offensive lineman. So from like your perspective, Ryan, from what we saw, what he did at Florida, what are the things that caught your attention?
I mean, the first thing, Joe, is like from a body type perspective, because we did have preseason numbers on him, which he was right around 6'5", 347 pounds, 33.25-inch arms, a 7-foot wingspan, and also had 11 and an 1/8 inch hands. So this is, I mean, to call this gentleman massive would be a massive understatement, right? No pun intended. Like, he is a big dude. And I mean, he's like one of those dudes that can block out the sun or block out the screen on the All-22. Like, he's that type of guy, right? So I think that it was easy to see that he would be able to transition over from Louisiana to Florida, you know, a bump up obviously from a Sun Belt squad all the way up to the SEC conference. But I think that when you look at him, man, like he is an SEC caliber guard right off the bat, just for how large and I mean, he's well proportioned too, because it's not like he's one of those guys that actually looks shorter than he is sometimes, because you're just like, he's just a wide dude, like he's just round.
Stocky.
Yeah, he's just so stocky. But then you're like, oh, he's also 6'5" and has decent length at guard as well. I mean, he is bordering on tackle length at the position. So seeing a guy like him, man, immediate, can displace gaps with the best of them in college football. The power he can create in some very tight windows and the movement he could create is outrageous. And I actually think that he's a pretty good athlete for his size as well, Joe. Like, I don't think that he's just a power scheme only guard. I think he could do some inside zone stuff. I think he can do some outside zone stuff. I will say maybe trim down the frame a little bit if you're a more of a zone exclusive team overall at the next level. But I think when you're talking about just the brute strength, power, and good enough foot quickness, I think you're talking about a starting guard at the next level who's going to be a good player, bordering on a Pro Bowler in the right situation. Like, I mean, he screams Baltimore Raven to me all day, right? Like, you just see him in that type of scheme, being in that type of system. But I just think that he has starter traits all over the place.
And one thing you do notice, first of all, from that transition from Louisiana, very clearly in a lot better shape. Like, he physically looks like he's in a lot better shape. And that's one of those things, too. We'll see improvements throughout his pre-draft process because that's what his focus is going to be 1,000% with whatever strength coach that he has is going to be. All right, let's get you to lean down a little bit, not lose weight, but get into a little bit better control of holding the weight. And Florida's already done a really good job of that. I will say, the power is evident. I wrote down that like he's like a forklift. He is a guy who on a duo block, he's picking guys up, and he's just the minute whoever he's working with branches off, he's still going and he's carrying that guy downfield. Like it is like teach tape how you want to show some of these guys how they want to pick up those double teams.
Yeah, I mean, and I think a big part of that, Joe, is obviously he's got the lower body strength, right? Like he's got a massive lower half. But also, I mentioned the hand size, 11 and a quarter. Like those are big hands. And I think it matches up, right? Like this kid has vice grips for hands. When he gets inside of you, it's over with. Like he's going to be able to displace very easy at the next level.
I wrote on both as a run blocker and a pass blocker. The minute that he does get that good grip inside, it's the rep's usually over. That hand strength is so freaky. It's so scary. The one thing I will say is that you still do get shades of that rawness. Like his footwork is inconsistent. It's a little slow at times, which makes sense for how freaking big he is, but he moves well for a player of his size. But I just had some issues with occasional angles. Actually not occasional. I had an issue with angles, with timing, with hand placement in certain spots. As a pass blocker, his technique and his footwork, I think, need to be improved. And that's why we're not sitting here talking about him, I think, as a likely first round pick. I think that there is refinement that is necessary for a guy like Torrence.
Well, and I think that it's necessary refinement too. Not only just, I mean, like you can look at every player and be like, he needs to be more consistent from a technical perspective. And like, yes, it's true across the board. But I think it's really important for a guy like O'Cyrus Torrence because at 347 pounds, with a frame that maybe could trim down a little bit, right? He's a guy that I think he has adequate foot quickness. Like when he gets moving in a straight line, he's a very good linear athlete, in my opinion. Like he can work up to second level. But when he has to redirect in space a little bit, I mean, he's a big guy, man. Like there's just going to be some natural tightness there, change in direction. So I don't think he's the most flexible player of all time, but I also don't think we should expect him to be super flexible. But when you are that type of player, Joe, where maybe you are a little laboring as far as changing direction and being a better player in space, you're going to have to take proper angles. You're going to have to, right? Because that's how you mediate that inconsistency, that liability, I guess, to a degree, right? So I think that, people are going to look at him and say, power system guard, no doubt. But I do think that there's more upside than that, right? Like I do think that there's some scheme diversity to an O'Cyrus Torrence. I just think it comes down to, I agree, he got in better shape from Louisiana to Florida. But I think there's a next level you can take as far as just continuing to trim down that frame a little bit, add better weight back to it, those types of things. He's not going to lose the power profile because he's just densely built everywhere. Like he's always going to be a powerful guy. I think it's about now, let's trim, let's become a little more flexible. If you can, then we're talking about a complete scheme-diverse offensive guard that can play in any system. Early on in his career, he's probably better in a power system. But my point is that I think that he has enough foot quickness and enough athleticism overall that if he maintains his body properly, he can be a scheme diverse guard.
Absolutely. And I got to say, if you haven't figured this out, if you tuned in to the off season, the summer scouting version of this breakdown on Torrence, my evaluation on him and my perspective on him is significantly better. Like he has taken a significant jump forward in my eyes. I gave him an early to mid day 2 grade. So essentially I see this guy going somewhere in the second round. I think a lot of teams are going to be wary on taking him in the first round because they're going to prioritize other position groups and then maybe some more refined players. But once you get to round 2, this is the perfect example of a guy like, holy shit, he's got all the traits. Let's just get him in, and maybe in a couple years he really works out with that Pro Bowl potential that you're talking about, or at the very least he has the capability to just be like a quality starter, like a really like to slightly below average, like a very mediocre starter is what I see it as his floor right now, because of those traits. Where if his technique is as shitty as it is right now, and he doesn't improve that at all, the power is enough to keep him in for a few years as a mediocre starter. So that's my floor for him with that Pro Bowl potential. Why I'm willing to take him in the second round.
Yeah, no, I think it makes total sense. I mean, Joe, I think that he did really good for himself transferring to Florida, right? Like, there's not going to be a level of competition concerns anymore. He played in the SEC, continued to have a lot of production, and now he's going to go to the Senior Bowl, and I think he's going to do a tremendous job down in Mobile and be able to, again, show why he is arguably the top guard in the 2023 class. Like, you can make that type of argument for O'Cyrus Torrence. So I think that he is a top 64 player all day. I do not see him straying past the second round, because I think that every team is going to look at O'Cyrus Torrence and saying, hey, maybe the upside isn't catastrophic, but the floor is just so high. This kid is a starting caliber offensive guard. And I agree with you. I think that the floor is that he is at least a sound starter, but I think he has plus starter traits. If you get into the right situation, maybe there's a Pro Bowl in the future, but regardless, I think that he's a very solid starting offensive guard at the next level.